Our next chapter is called 9 o'clock. I smashed face first into Ryan's butterfly mobile. That's how I knew I was at the crib. I felt for him, got my hands under his nightshirt and diaper, rolled him over. I lifted him, but I didn't get far. He was caught on the mobile, his arm or his head. I couldn't see. I couldn't get him loose. "Mom!" I yelled, though I knew she wasn't there. I tried to lay him down again, but he was so tangled. Part of him was still up in the air, and he started to cry. "Wait, Ryan, I'll get you out." But I couldn't. Finally, holding him with my left arm, I climbed onto the side of the crib. My right hand followed the string up the mobile way up to the hook. I yanked it loose, and the whole thing came crashing down on top of us as I jumped backward off the crib. The plastic butterfly poking me was poking Ryan too, but I didn't care. The tornado was close and I knew it. Both of my ears had popped, and I had this crazy fear that those drains, sucking like monsters now, would get us if the storm didn't. Arthur was at the bottom of the stairs waiting. Thank God he found a flashlight. I jumped the last half flight to the floor. "Hurry!" I screamed. I swung into the doorway of the bathroom, with Arthur right behind me. We crouched under the towel rack. "Shine it here on Ryan," I gasped. "He's caught in this thing." By now, Ryan was kicking and screaming, and his eyes were big in the light. Once we got the mess of strings free off of Ryan's sweaty nightshirt, Arthur kicked the mobile against the wall by the toilet. "I have to go home," he cried. "They won't let me go to the basement. Mama never does." The beam of light bounced around the blackness of the bathroom as Arthur scrambled to his feet, but I grabbed and held on to him. "You can't go! It's here! Can you feel it?" The siren quit again as I pulled him back down and threw my leg over him. The flashlight clattered to the floor and rolled away from us. We heard it next. The lull. The deadliest quiet ever. One that makes you think you just might explode. The heat in that room built until I couldn't get my breath. Then I began to hear noises. A chair scraping across the kitchen floor upstairs. "Your mom's back," Arthur said, pushing at my leg. I knew it wasn't my mother moving the chair. The noises got worse. It seemed as if every piece of furniture was moving around up there. Big, heavy things smashing into each other. A window popped. Crash! Another. Glass shattering everywhere right next to us in the laundry room. I pulled a towel down over Ryan and held him tight. If he was still crying, I didn't know it because I was feeling the sucking this time. It was like something trying to lift my body right up off the floor. Arthur felt it too. "Oh, Mother of God!" He crossed himself. "We're going to die!" 10 seconds more, and that howling, shrieking tornado was upon us. "The blanket!" I screamed at Arthur's ear. He pulled it down from the countertop, and we covered ourselves, our hands shaking wildly. I wasn't worrying about my mom then, or my dad, or Mrs. Smiley. Just us. Ryan and Arthur and me, huddled together on the floor. The roaring had started somewhere to the east, then came bearing down on us like 100 freight trains. Only that twister didn't move on. It stationed itself right overhead, making the loudest noise I'd ever heard, whining worse than any jet. There was a tremendous crack, and I felt the wall shudder behind us. I knew then our house was being ripped apart, and suddenly chunks of ceiling were falling on our heads. "We'll be buried," was all I could think. At that moment, as plain as anything above the deafening roar, I heard my dad's voice. "The shower's the safest place." I didn't question hearing it. Holding Ryan against me with one arm, I began crawling towards the shower stall. I reached back and yanked at Arthur's shirt. Somehow we got inside with the blanket. Another explosion, and the glass shower door shattered all over the bathroom floor. We pulled the blanket over our heads, and I began to pray. Out loud, though, I couldn't hear my own voice. God help us," I said over and over into Ryan's damp hair, my lips moving against his head. I knew Arthur was praying, too. Jammed into my side, I could feel Ryan's heart beating through his undershirt against mine. My heart was thanking God for making me go back to him, but not in words. Outside those places where our bodies touched, there was nothing but terror as the roar of the tornado went on and on. I thought the world was coming to an end, had come to an end, and so would we at any minute. Then I felt Ryan's fat fingers close around mine. He pulled my hand close to his mouth and started sucking on my finger, and it made me cry. The tears ran down my cheeks and onto his head. With the whole world blowing to pieces around us, Ryan took my hand, and it made me feel better. Afterward, neither Arthur nor I was able to say how long we huddled there in the basement shower. A tornado's forward speed is generally 30 to 50 miles an hour, the meteorologist had told us. Our tornado's forward speed was 0. It parked right there on Sand Crane Drive. 5 minutes or 10, we couldn't tell, but it seemed like an hour. Roaring and humming and shrieking, that twister was right on top of us. I will never be that scared again as long as I live, and neither will Arthur. When at last the noise began to let up, Arthur jerked out from under the blanket, leaned across me to the opening of the shower, and vomited into the half-broken glass and sheetrock. The glow from the half-buried flashlight showed his head bobbing again and again. Squeamish as I am about something like that, I wasn't revolted. I wondered if I had wet my pants myself. I couldn't tell for sure because water had started rising underneath the shower. My shoes and jeans were both soaked. I had to move Ryan, who was wriggling to be put down, way up onto my shoulder. "Arthur," I said, my voice shaking, but thinking to encourage him. "We made it. We're alive." I looked away as he heaved again. Arthur was still doubled over the sheetrock mess when the hail began. Once it got going, it hit us with the force of a buckshot. That fast, I knew the kitchen upstairs was gone, floor and all. Those marble-sized hailstones were pouring in from somewhere. I thought of Mom's new sewing machine. And my bike. It didn't take long for Arthur to crawl back beside me, but even under the blanket those hailstones hurt like crazy, smacking our heads and shoulders. We huddled together to protect Ryan, who was down in my lap again. Suddenly I was hit with a sickness worse than Arthur's. Mom! Where was she? Did she get to Smiley's? "Arthur!" I cried, sitting up straight. "My mom! My whole family!" he choked out. In that second, I could see my mother's car hurtling through the air, see it ripping open, the black funnel sucking her out and swirling her away, and I could hear her scream. I started crying. She can't be dead. She can't be. I hit my head against the tile to make the picture stop. "Shut up!" Arthur shouted. "Just shut up, will you?" He pulled away so we weren't touching and drew himself into the opposite corner of the shower. I didn't care. I felt as if someone had reached down my throat and turned me inside out. Another terrifying thought slammed into my head. What if we were the only ones alive? 3 of us. Out of 38,000 people, an entire city gone. Bodies strewn all the way up the river. Chills raced up my arms. I was shaking all over. At least, I scrabbled for something to hang on to. At least I still have my dad. He'd be safe, wouldn't he, out on the farm? With a rush, I thought of everyone else. Stacy and Angelique, not even a year old, and all the Darlingtons in between. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, have mercy on us. I heard Arthur's prayer above the ripping and rattling of the storm and knew he wasn't thinking of himself. I clenched my teeth to keep from going to pieces. "Please, God, please," I begged, "make everyone okay." Overhead, the storm continued to rage. The sharp sound of hail striking tile went on, and I began to wonder if we might just be battered to death. Now and then, a finger of wind reached into our hiding place, flipping the blanket until we anchored it under us again. I shuddered and pulled my knees, shifting the baby once more. With the temperature dropping and the water rising, we couldn't stay in the shower stall forever. What were we going to do? Only Ryan had recovered enough to be himself and was dabbling one hand with the water, making happy noises. Once I got him into standing position against my knees, he began talking and stretching under the blanket tent. He wasn't worried. I wiped my tears on the back of his undershirt. What does he know? I thought for a second, wishing I could trade places with him. He wouldn't even remember this night. As Ryan bunched up in my lap to jump, I took a hold of his hands to steady him. I made little balls of his fists and felt how small they were inside of my big 12-year-old hands. Suddenly, it occurred to me that I had saved his life. I had. I warmed myself on that thought as I rubbed my cheek against his head. He was so little. As he bounced and gurgled, I could see why Mom liked him so much. That was when I remembered Minerva. My cat! Oh no! Had she followed us downstairs? But a cat would find a place, wouldn't she? To ride out the storms? Cats are smart. They can take care of themselves. She's all right. I convinced myself because I couldn't bear to think otherwise. The hard, peppering sounds of the hail were growing slushier, softer. The hail was turning to rain. Quickly, I slipped the blanket off my head. My gosh, there was a night sky where the bathroom ceiling had been. I shivered as icy raindrops splattered on my face and went streaking down my cheek. Somehow seeing was worse than knowing. Arthur, I nudged him with my foot. Look up there. He pulled the blanket off and tipped back his head. We sat there, blinking into the rain as the blanket bopped up and down over Ryan. That's the end of this chapter. Add a response on Seesaw and tell me what you remember reading about.